dark, sinister cloud, lying low, crouching like a black serpent. What could it be? Farmers burning their stubble? Too early in the year. A thundercloud? He had never seen such a cloud in his life. Puzzled, slightly apprehensive, he shook his head and continued his inspection. He passed a strip of millet, then rows of potatoes ready for lifting. As head of the family, Wei bore sole responsibility for its well-being. His family consisted of his aging father, his wife, and 6 young children. It was his duty alone to protect them, to feed them, to secure their futures. If the farm failed, they would all starve. But in some ways they were the least of his problems. Buried in the ground lay his ancestors, those who had farmed this land for countless generations before him. The Wei ancestors were never short of an opinion on when a crop should be planted, when harvested, whether a wedding was wise, should he buy another strip of land. In his prayers, Wei had to negotiate very carefully with them. They wielded great power in the afterlife, deciding who would be allowed to join them after death and who would be cast aside. At night, Wei worked while his family slept, repairing farm implements, mending furniture. Each morning, he and his eldest child, a daughter, rose before dawn, he for his inspection, she to run errands in the village. As he inspected his land, he worked out mentally what work each family member would do that day. He and eldest son would transport the remaining stooks in for threshing. His son, aged 13, could only carry one at a time, but he, Wei, would carry 2 under his arms and 1 strapped across his shoulders. He did not want to use the cart, as 2 of the spokes on one of its wheels were rotting and could break if overloaded. He hoped to hold off repairs till he got money for his surplus wheat in the winter. On the strip for family vegetables, most of them were past their prime and dying. The onions' spiky green leaves had long since died and been laid to one side, ready to lift. His second daughter, Cherry Blossom, would carry them back to the courtyard and plait them. Meanwhile, his second son would strip the older leaves from the burdock patch and, having carried them back to the courtyard, climb onto the shed roof. Second son was only 5 years old, but more responsible than his elder sister, Cherry Blossom, aged 8. She could pass the onions and burdock leaves up to him so he could lay them on the thatch to dry. The fennel and garlic up there were dry by now, so they could pass them down, tie them in bunches, and hang them in the storeroom. He passed the family's 3 walnut trees. Already their green-husked fruits were falling. Grandfather, while he was minding the 2 youngest children, could potter out with them and gather them up. Meanwhile, Wei himself would get the long, thin poles out of storage so the rest could be beaten down. A family that is not working is dying. He looked up at that cloud again. It still squatted there on the far northern horizon. He wondered if the rumours in the village were true. Wei's eldest daughter stood in the village street. It was empty. A lesser being than this 16-year-old girl would have panicked. Not eldest daughter. She stared ahead of her, calculating. The news needed to be told. But how? How could she say to her family what had to be said so that they would believe her and act on it? In front of her, as the first rays of sunlight started to strike out from the eastern horizon, Old Man Chun sat in the street with his back against a wall, smoking on his opium pipe, shivering in the early morning cold. Behind him, on the wall, he had pasted the pages of a recent newspaper. He and eldest daughter, known to everyone,